Welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 212, The Situation Is What the Situation Is. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson, otherwise known as RCA, and I am the host, and I'm here this morning in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 212 of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, I want to welcome you to a brand new week. I hope that you had a safe 4th of July holiday last week, and the doldrums of summer have settled in, and it's 7-Eleven. You know, if that's a thing. I don't know. I know it's silly to think 7-Eleven, but anyway.
7-Eleven.
Can we start again? I feel stupid for having made that joke.
Oh, I love that joke.
Okay, all right. We won't start again.
Just leave it.
Well, it's authentic. Dave's
it's
tired.
Authentic, for goodness sake. It took me a second to get it. So the reason I didn't laugh right away, I'm so sleepy this morning. So it is authentic.
It's all right.
You know?
Yeah, it's a dad joke, and I'm not a dad.
It's kind of a dad joke. I have to admit, you know, as much as I say don't spend hours on social media, which I don't, but recently I have gotten a little, there are these two guys on Instagram that do dad jokes, and I find them hysterical. So I find Instagram is good for a laugh and sometimes inspiration. So I'm really excited, too, about a couple of the guests we've had recently and have coming up. And, you know, we've directed you to go check them out on Instagram. It seems to be that Instagram is less politically motivated and is just a little bit more about sharing. Yeah, there's some sales stuff, but yeah, I've seen some awesome drum videos, and I love connecting with that part of myself and my life on Instagram. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've gotten into Instagram here lately, mostly with the launch of, you know, my music community.
52 Qs,
yeah, absolutely. But I agree. It doesn't. I don't find myself doom scrolling nearly as much. You know, and getting really.
Exactly.
I don't come away from Instagram depressed and like sad
Right.
for humanity.
Well, yes, exactly. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Dave. I'm laughing at myself because the other day I was trying to upload a video and it would never upload because I wasn't in whatever, you know, Wi-Fi. And anyway, ended up, I think, uploading it 2 or 3 times. So if you see me keep posting in video, I'm
You're
really
like,
not
okay,
trying
we
to
get
sell
it.
you
No,
anything.
we really yes, we've seen the video. Clearly, you want us to see this. Got it. Message received.
But the people that do all of my, you know, help me manage my content, I have a team that works with me. And one basically just does graphics and website, and the other one, you know, I write everything, but she helps manage it and put it in a beautiful email form and everything. And so she is saying, I love your videos. I get something out of them. I think you should keep doing them. And so if I just get the idea to do it, I do it, but I don't spend a lot of, I mean, I'm not getting my makeup perfect and using a filter.
Yeah, there was one you were like in the car, I think. You were even sporting.
I've done a couple.
Yeah, you were sporting.
Oh, but that was the recent one. Yeah, I had on the
yacht
purple.
shirt. Yep. EOTs. That's what we call. That's what we call the channel. That's the inside baseball lingo. EOTs.
Oh yeah, the inside scoop is EOTs.
EOTs.
Yeah. Experience of the Soul podcast channel.
That's what all the cool kids are saying.
yeah, the cool kids. Let me know when you find one. Yeah.
You have one.
We're kind of, me and you are the band nerds.
That's
Dave.
right. Oh, absolutely. No, but you have a cool kid. That was really great hanging out recently. Got to spend a Sunday helping out the AV team at Unity North Tampa, and Josh, who is, man, you hit the lottery with that kid. And I know you know.
He's in a,
but
what a young man. Yeah. He sounded amazing on the violin, didn't he?
Absolutely crushed it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's fun is he's grown up around a lot of music. And as a matter of fact, we're traveling today and tomorrow. We're going to be seeing some family, and there's always music to be had there. So that's going to be a lot of fun because he's learning at a young age to listen, use his ears, play a variety of music. So the last time there was a big get together and we were singing hymns and stuff, he sang along and listened, but then he pulled out his violin and played, a classical piece and just crushed it. Everybody was like, whoa,
That's
but
great.
we've always had a variety of music because so many of my siblings, are classically trained musicians. My brother's a composer and has a lot of stuff out there. My brother played this piece. It was basically his version of the national anthem. He rewrote the national anthem. Oh my God, I was in tears. It was so beautiful.
I'm not sure I knew your brother was a composer. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, my brother. Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Yep,
That's
one of
very
my
cool.
brothers. I'll tell you about him at the break. But
Yeah.
he's got a lot of amazing compositions, and so it was really great. It was really great for my son to be able to connect with him and some of my other musical siblings. So
yeah.
And I'm really excited about today. It's so funny how I was totally overthinking the topic, and then as we talked earlier, and we're recording, a couple shows today, so I think it's going to be a great day. It's always a gift to me to be able to talk about these things because in my way of doing ministry, as I'm giving a message or a show, I'm always being ministered to because I don't feel like I'm saying this is what RCA wants to say. It's more like I tap into spirit and say, speak through me. And yes, of course, I'm telling personal stories. My personality will come through, but it's a grander truth than what I know in my mind. And very recently, the feedback has been really beautiful about that. And so this is always my goal. And what I want you to know is, as the listener, that I get blessed in the middle of doing it because I feel like I'm receiving messages from this higher energy, either the higher aspects of my own soul, God, Christ, universe, whatever you want to call it. So, and today is such a day that we're talking about, we're just going to talk about what happens in life. So, Dave, give us the title.
The title for today's episode 212, is "The Situation Is What the Situation Is." The situation is what the situation is. And it's interesting that you mentioned changing this because this is actually the third topic. Because we set out, several weeks ahead of time. Okay, these are all the shows in July or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this morning when we got together, like, I'm changing it, which is absolutely your prerogative. It's no problem, no problem. But then just as we were talking and kind of our pre-show ramp up as we kind of check in, you're like, you know what? Let's change it again. And absolutely, I find that some of our best shows come when we are just responding to whatever spirit is doing in the moment.
Yeah, what's alive in us. I had a therapist years ago who was a real gift to me. His name was Garth Mathis. And Garth would say, he was real quiet, real still, my total polar opposite. And he would go, so, why don't you tell me what's alive in you today? And I would go, well... And I would have to pause because I'd never had somebody say, what's alive in you today? And so I learned from him, whatever is up, that's the thing that either needs to be processed, talked about, worked through. And so, often I'm also working through these topics as I'm teaching it. It's like Spirit's teaching me as I'm giving the message. So it's a real, it's a place of service for me to be, but it's also a place of receiving. Oh, and by the way, thank you. Many of you reached out on our receiving message. I got texts and emails and several conversations. So thank you. I'm glad that message hit home. By the time it aired, I had no idea what we said. So I had to go and listen again. And I thank you for that. So the situation is what the situation is. So a Unity minister once said, not me, a Unity minister once said, the situation is what the situation is, and you have to deal with the situation as it is. So there's a lot that is packed into that statement. The situation is what the situation is, and you have to deal with the situation as it is. I'm going to give you an example. I live in one part of Florida, and I work in another part. I live in Florida and all of my family is in another state. There's some recent Supreme Court decisions. There are, as we age, there are health challenges that we pretend are not there, or we just take more Advil. Right. So think about that. I just saw this comedian on Instagram that said, he was so funny. He goes, and I would name him if I could remember. I never want to steal somebody's material, but he goes, I'm 48 years old, and evidently you can injure oneself while you sleep, because I don't have this injury when I go to bed, and somehow I wake up like I pulled my calf muscle. All right, so this is about, as we age, our body changes. And I was in a group, I don't know, probably 6 or 8 months ago. I was in this meditation group, and the teacher said, I'm getting really guided that somebody in here keeps taking Advil rather than go to the doctor right now. And she didn't know anything, and the person goes, oh my God, that's me, And she said, you need to be seen. So why am I saying that? You're like, well, is this a health show? Well, yes. The situation is what the situation is, right? And so if we pretend something is not happening, well, those problems just get worse over time, not better, right? So I had this issue at one of as church I served years ago, and there was a leak, and I said, well, did you call the plumber? Well, it doesn't seem to be leaking now. I said, well, here's the deal with leaks. If they don't get our attention, they only get worse. They don't just stop leaking on their own. So if we want to protect this building, we're going to look at the leak. Oh, yeah, of course. So I'm saying you've got to deal with the situation, which means like getting into reality. If we were in church, right, I'd be saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. Come on, come on. Like, quit pretending something is happening that isn't. So, we were talking about my Instagram post the other day, Dave, and actually what it was about was I had to go in unexpectedly to work. Well, of course, I'm a minister. That happens, right? But when you live so far away, because my apartment there is not ready yet, they're working on it right now. But because my apartment there has not been ready, I'm still driving, a long distance to go in. So when and it was, the contractor had not kept his word about what he was doing. And so, I wanted to play the victim card. I wanted to say, blah, 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 blah. But bottom line was what I got once I really thought through it, because I was like, what is bothering me about this? Well, it bothered me that he didn't keep his word. It bothers me I have to go in when I would normally be doing prep for Sunday, right? It bothers me that I can't rest on my Saturday, which is what I usually like to do. It's what I need to do. And yet, the situation was what the situation was. So, so I had to get into reality about, okay, well, so what is mine to do? It doesn't really matter if I'm upset. It doesn't really matter if he didn't keep his word. What is mine to do? Well, I'm the minister, so that's my job. So I go in. And I realized my ego was fighting so hard to say, you don't have to be there, and it's not your problem, blah, blah, blah. So, and even some beautiful people said, I know you have a long drive. And I didn't say a word. I didn't complain. They had no idea I was, going through my internal angst. And one of the members who was going to be helping me that morning, also giving up a Saturday morning, said, are you sure you have to drive this far just to do this? And I said, that's a great question. And the simple answer is yes. And so it was so funny because the night, it was the day before, I was all, out of whack about it. Well, then I went and did my workout, and, I got home and I was like, oh, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow. It was a complete like shift. I was like, oh, I get to see people I love. I had this little thing I do with the birds on the way. I kind of catalog the various species I see on the way. There's this one little spot. I always see these sandhill cranes. There's another spot. I often see a hawk or eagle. There's another spot. I sometimes see an alligator. So I love like cataloging that as I go. And so it's like, oh, good. My son can sleep in. I can go to work for a few hours and make sure Sunday goes off without a hitch. And you know what? Once I got into reality, the situation really wasn't that bad. But I did have to get into reality. I had to know what the situation really was. And then what I came to, once I reasoned through it, is that we're actually, by me going in and getting volunteers to do this particular aspect of the work that the contractor did not do and did not keep his word, is that it saved the church quite a bit of money. Because now the insurance company doesn't have to pay them to do it. They get to pay the church. Right? So it was a wonderful decision. Because they could have done it. Because last minute, after I'd called everybody, what added insult to injury, and I think kicked it up even more, was he called and said, or he texted and said, oh, my guys will be there tonight. I said, no, I'm going to handle this. I said, you can't change again. I've got it handled. So the situation is what the situation is, and you have to deal with the situation as it is. And so it's going to require us to, move through this ego stuff that always wants to get mad, that always wants to be a victim, that always wants to say somebody didn't do this and that. Well, it doesn't really matter what they did. What matters is what are we going to do? I mean, it matters, but I can't do anything about the contractor not fulfilling what he said he was going to do. Me being mad changes nothing. That's what I've discovered. It's like there's a moment of mad, and then it's like, well, what's the situation? Because as long as I'm mad, I'm still looking for somebody to blame.
It's like we're working on Larry's car. Larry passed in October of 2020.
Oh,
and literally like up to a week before he passed, he was working on this 2002 Chevy Camaro. It was his prized possession, right? And so he's working on changing out shocks and all of this stuff. And, he passed away, which has been a whole other, kind of thing, because it literally is like he kind of just disappeared. His tools were exactly where they were. Wow. Right up until. So that's been, processing that. It's been times of grief. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is
but that's all part of this situation though, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm. But now we're at the point now and we're processing, okay, all right, we need to do something with this car. It needs to be repaired. It's literally like up on jacks. The wheels are
I've
off.
seen it like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And just within the last month, we've started making progress. We have a mechanic coming out and looking at it, and he is getting stymied by the same things that Larry was getting stymied by in the repair process and had to take parts with him. And it's going significantly slower than anybody in the home wants, because it's kind of like, we're ready to close this chapter. Right. And we need to close this chapter. And now that we have gotten to the place where, okay, we're ready to close the chapter, let's get it closed. But it's moving significantly slower than anybody really wants. And just last night, the mechanic came by looking for a part, and we're going to have to order the part. And I know Judy's really disappointed. And I have to.
That's his wife, right?
Right. Yeah.
Shannon's mom.
Yeah. Judy is his widow. And so I have to embrace this.
Yes.
This situation is what the situation is, right? I have to. There's nothing I can do about it. I think this mechanic is still the best person to do it. It just is what it is. And I just have to believe that, in the universe's timing of all of this, that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And so I've been practicing this very thing in our own life because of this, 2002 Camaro up on blocks sitting in my garage.
Yeah. And there's so much emotion tied to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's much bigger than my little work thing, but it is about getting into reality about, what's really happening. And really, it's asking and following through on what is mine to do here to move this forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when it came time to prepare, the car for somebody else to come in,
Mhm.
I mean, Shannon wanted to be the one to pick up his tools. I mean, literally, it was as if he just vanished from
Wow.
existence. His tools were literally exactly where he left them. It was.
Mhm.
It wasn't like intended to be a shrine or anything. It was just so painful because that car represents,
Oh,
who Larry was, And so Shannon had to do some work, had to go in and pick up those tools and just,
oh
and
yeah.
I
I can only
offered,
imagine for
and I
her.
even
Yeah.
said, I'm happy to do this.
Like I help. Yeah.
Yeah. But she's like, no, this is
No.
mine to do. It's
Yeah.
part of my process.
Yeah.
And,
Good for her.
yeah, it was really healing for her. It's not easy. And she's still,
Mm.
hurt because daddy isn't with us anymore. But there's forward progress. But
Sounds like it.
but the situation is what the situation is. Absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, Dave, that's a good break. I want to just leave people with that because this is big stuff we're working through, and some of the situations, as I said, are bigger. They're more emotionally in depth, but most definitely require our attention. And we are about becoming more conscious, right? So we'll be back right after this brief break. See you in a few. Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. And I always hope on the break you have a little time to, take the information inward and apply it to your own life. I know that's kind of the miracle of story, is that as we're sharing our stories, sometimes you're not even hearing the detail, and that's fine. But what you're doing is you're calling up situations in your own life and going, oh yeah, that needs my attention, or oh yeah. So when we're talking about this topic, the situation is what the situation is. What we're really saying is to move out of resistance. In the book Loving What Is, Byron Katie talks at length and in depth about that. She says, when you're arguing with reality, you'll lose, but only 100% of the time. She has a story about, if you go in and your kids have left socks on the floor, well, if you're mad about socks on the floor, you're going to lose because the socks are already on the floor. So if you don't want socks on the floor, you might want to pick them up. But to expect someone to know you don't like socks on the floor is living in a fantasy. Now, there's some parents out there that are going to go, oh no, my kid can never hear this podcast.
Yeah, I can see a kid kind of, well, Reverend Cynthia Alice said, you just got to pick up my socks.
Right. So, and there are larger ways, that we resist, but there's an old saying, it's actually from the great psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung, who said, what we resist persists. What we resist persists. Right? So, in New Thought, we say thoughts held in mind reproduce after their kind. It's kind of it sounds like a little bit of a cheesy colloquialism or something. But what it really is the law of mind action, or the law of cause and effect, right? That whatever we resist keeps coming in for our attention. And so, if there are issues in your relationship, for instance, and you're not dealing with those, you're not acknowledging those, they're going to keep coming up until there's some kind of healing or completion. Haven't you ever been in a situation where, and it could even be with a friend, where if something's not talked about, it kind of festers and grows, and it's always there until it gets some attention, right? So think about that in your life. Is there any place, that you're really not dealing with the situation as it is?
Anybody who's been listening to Dr. Donna, my whole wisdom tooth drama saga, not going to the dentist for decades, and until I had this really wisdom, tooth issue.
You had to go, right?
And that was pretty much all of my last year. And it was very much like that, where I just kind of tucked it away, and due to like trauma and childhood trauma about dental surgery and all this. But yeah, on the other side of this, I'm absolutely, I'm so glad that I tackled that. But I wasn't willing to accept the situation, and
Yes.
let alone, act like a grown up. I wasn't acting my age, and I think we talked about it on the 200th episode as well. But it was very, very much that, where I was just not accepting the situation for what it was and pretending, like burying my head in the sand and pretending that it would just go away. Like when you mentioned, yeah, just take some Advil and it'll all work itself out. It's going to be fine.
It'll all work out.
That was 100% me. I felt seen.
Well, I did it with my back on a workout. I had, I'd been, I've done some really difficult workouts lately. And so I'd been kind of sore. It's pretty normal when you do the level of working out that I'm doing. And then I had a big sneeze, and evidently it knocked out one of my ribs. And even though I was already in pain, I went and worked out anyway. And there was a move that we did. I said, I have to stop right now. It was like, okay, if I keep going, I'm not going to be able to breathe. And it was this floating rib that was out, which is actually very dangerous. So I did get it looked at. And what I discovered, and I'm a big believer, in alternative medicines and chiropractic and everything, but I was having to get a few too many adjustments. And I said, what is going on? Like, I feel like, yes, I can take Advil to get the pain down. Yes, I can get an adjustment. But at my age, with my diet and my general overall health, with my spiritual and emotional health, I should not be having to do this many adjustments. Something is wrong. And so what I discovered is that to do some yoga stretches a couple times a day, well, I've made 0 trips to the chiropractor. Because yes, the bones were out, but the bones were out because the muscles, were so cranked. So now that I'm stretching and learning to elongate my various muscles in my back and stretch, those specific areas, I have had 0 issue and pain. So it's been a huge learning experience. But the only reason I got there is because I, kept trying to power through, even though I was in pain. And even though I was spending a lot of money on adjustments, it's like, well, okay, I need an adjustment. Boom. Okay, well, I need an adjustment. Boom. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't need this many adjustments. This is not normal. I don't need back surgery. Like this is, and I've had chiropractic and acupuncture. I was into, naturopathic before naturopathic was cool, So, and I also think a lot of times issues need a variety of disciplines, Allopathic medicine has a lot to offer us. Some of our listeners are scared to go to doctors. I'm like, well, you have to use some discernment like I did with the chiropractor. But bottom line is I had to get my rib back into place first. So I needed both. But until I dealt with that situation, it was really dogging me, And so what makes this a spiritual experience is that we come into reality. So there's a type of awakening that's happening. And there's a type of listening that's happening on an internal level. Right, Dave? Like even with your teeth, even though Donna, was talking to you, it was like, okay, yes, I need to deal with this. And it is a grown-up behavior to take care of things like that. It is a childlike behavior. This is not a judgment. We all do this. It's a childlike behavior to say, oh, no, it's going to be fine. The fact that I'm, in my 50s and thought I could push through that level of pain was a childlike behavior also. And sometimes we're just not conscious of certain things. Mm-mm. But remember, that's what we're doing. We're becoming conscious.
Yeah,
so
I wasn't.
Dave and I, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wasn't conscious of the fact that my fear of going to the dentist stemmed from some traumatic experiences for having dental surgery as a kid. Like that literally.
You didn't have that memory?
Like a light. Well, I remember, but I didn't connect it to trauma. having listened
Exactly.
to between like you and like Mindy and
And
Donna talking about trauma, I've been listening to hours and hours directly into my earphones, but it just didn't connect. But as soon as Dr. Donna said, well, that's a trauma response, Dave. I mean, I'm surprised, that satellites in space didn't pick up on the light bulb that went off over my head.
Right. It was
I was like, oh, well, now I know how to work through this. Now I know what to do with this. It's not just this unnamed blob of fear hanging somewhere, behind my head. It's like, oh, all right, I have a path forward. And that's what really, really helped me.
Yeah, I think that's a real good one, Dave, to kind of dive into, because there are a couple important things you said. One is sometimes we need help discerning and coming into consciousness around something. Because I think, I'm not sure if without Donna's support you would have gone that deeply into it. Right? What do you think?
It would have gotten. I mean, it wasn't to the point where like, oh my gosh, my face is swelling and I'm bleeding or anything like that. It was just like, oh, I'm having this issue. And she's like, and she kind of poked at it in the way that she does, because she is a master, she's a counselor. And this is exactly what counselors and therapists do. They find the thing, they scratch at it to see if they can, get some movement. But I think in order for me to have gotten there myself, I probably would have had to like suffer like an actual like injury, like there had to some medical emergency would have had to prompt me to take action. But before it got to that point, before it became a crisis, I was able to work through it, and it's only by just luck, the grace of God, whatever you want to call it, that I only wound up with, a few cavities. I mean, that was really, and needing my wisdom teeth taken out and that kind of thing. I consider myself super fortunate and blessed that I didn't have much worse in my teeth than it actually was. But it would have taken a crisis to motivate me otherwise, without having somebody help me through that. And again, it wasn't even like this official counseling session. It was just banter while we were preparing for a show. We were just, because, we just chit chat, it's not just like turn on the mics and, we chit chat and get to know each other. And that's all it was. But because of who she is, just like because of who you are, it just comes out of you. It's who you are as people. And so it's not like an auto mechanic. Well, no, maybe it is like an auto mechanic.
Maybe it
is.
is.
If you're an auto mechanic and you are in a parking lot and you see somebody broken down, chances are you're going to go over and say, hey, bud,
exactly.
Can I help you?
Hey, buddy, you okay?
Yep. I know I've got ice cream melting, but I think you need help.
Yeah.
It's the exact same kind of thing.
Yeah. And some of the issues, again, whatever the situation you may be in, you could be in traffic. And if you're resisting the traffic, you're not dealing with the situation as it is. So you may as well, get comfy and find the blessing in it, because it's better than sitting there in this, anger ball. Fuming
and raging. Yeah. One of the things that I've tried to, speaking of traffic, is I've turned off the whole kind of like, I'm in front, you can't.
Right.
It costs me nothing to just let people in. Even if they're being giant jerks, even if they roared up, it costs me nothing. And I have found that I just feel better.
Yeah.
I feel better like letting people into traffic. And that's something that I think we've talked about on this show that I've consciously been doing. And so yesterday, driving back from UNT, it's about 2 hours, on a Sunday afternoon to my place. And I just, if somebody wants in, I'll let them in. I don't care if we've been stopped in traffic.
Okay, 5 seconds.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It costs me nothing, but those 5 seconds are that I'll get to my house later. The impact it has on my soul to like keep that energy, that weird icky energy in traffic, that's not helping anybody.
Right. And there is, I think, an intuition to this as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, there's a discerning piece, that you check in with yourself. There's for some reason, how somebody brings something up, it reminds you of another traffic story. There was this big trailer in front of me that had these two, those big hay bales that are those big rounds.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure what those are called, but they're hay bales, but they're the ones they do that are round, not little bales that are in like a rectangle, but those huge ones you see sitting out in a field. Anyway, there was two of these and they looked like they were just sitting on this flatbed. And I go, that does not look steady. And I go, I think I'm going to get over. And as soon as I started to move, a strap came off the hay bale and both hay bales dumped right where my car would have been. And I looked behind me and it was like something out of a TV show. There was hay everywhere. It had just exploded. Everybody else was skidding to a stop.
Oh my gosh.
And just because I was watching, I was tuned in, it was like, this is probably not a good idea. I think I saved myself a devastating accident. But now if I would have said, oh, I'm sure they tied it down, oh, blah, blah, blah. If I would have talked myself out of it, which sometimes we do. So I think we always know how to deal with whatever situation is in front of us, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not something special. We all have that ability. But we have to be aware of what the situation actually is. Right? The situation is what the situation is, and you have to deal with the situation as it is. That statement can be life-changing.
Shannon and I are rewatching Lost. Remember that from like 2004. And so there's a scene where Kate is asking Jack, who's a surgeon,
Yep.
how you deal with like that fear. Like, how do you deal with that? Like your life and death situation. And you're like, he's a spinal surgeon. And he says, I let the fear in for 5 seconds, but only 5 seconds. And then I'm able to address the situation.
Beautiful.
Now, I'm not encouraging everybody to just, freak out for 5 seconds. But I mean, I think there's something to be said about saying, acknowledging, wow, this traffic's really, really crummy and it makes me angry and I'm going to be late. But not acknowledging that, but not staying in that, because that's where for me, it becomes toxic.
Oh, yeah, because there is a denial too. And mostly what I have is people, or what I deal with in my practice and, as a minister, is people being in denial of what's happening, which is actually quite dangerous. If you're in situations that need your attention and you're not dealing with them, like I say, health-wise, relationship-wise, whatever, that's going to come to bite you, in the rear because you've got to deal with it. And so you're right, though, to minimize the reaction can be very helpful.
Yeah. And by, again, acknowledging it, but not embracing it.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that, hey, that mechanic, it's now gone on 3 weeks longer than we ever wanted it to, but it is what it is. And so me being angry about the mechanic changes nothing with the situation and only just feeds ickiness.
Exactly. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. This is really important what you're saying. And I'm hoping, friends, as you're listening, you are thinking, okay, wow, this really needs my attention. Or maybe I've been wrapped up in this situation, like railing against it in my mind. And if I could just surrender and see what it is, well, then you say, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? So, I think, I'm always about, what are your emotions telling you, tapping in, but sometimes we give the emotions too much attention so that it's running our life in a negative. So like, just because you're mad about something, everybody doesn't need to know it. You don't have to call 12 people. You don't have to, rip somebody a new one on what do you call it? On a review. I had a situation recently where I thought about writing a negative review and I thought, I just don't want my name associated with that kind of energy. I mean, it was an awful experience, but I thought, what good would a negative review do. And so I just decided, I'm just going to let it pass.
Yeah. Yeah. The same with like arguing with internet strangers.
Arguing with internet strangers. Oh, yeah. Or even people, it's never going to go the way you hope.
That's right. There's no upside.
There's no upside other than maybe you get to feel right for 5 or 10 seconds. But then, it's pretty quickly.
And then they write something back and now you're trapped.
Yeah. So
like quicksand.
Yeah, it is. It is like quicksand for sure. Because at the time it feels so right.
Mm-hmm. In the time it looks like solid ground. But before you know it, you're drowning and suffocating yourself
yes.
by flailing around.
Yes.
And you're making it worse.
Yes, exactly right. And of course, friends, what we want, the reason we're talking about this in depth is we want you to be able to live a life of freedom and joy.
Yeah.
We want you to be able to heal those places in you that are dogging you. Right? So Dave, give us the title again.
The situation is what the situation is. It is what it is.
It is what it is. And you have to deal with the situation as it is, dear friend. So my hope for you is that rather than resisting what is, you will come into reality with that and then do what's yours to do. And the sooner you do, the more ease, grace, freedom, and joy that accompanies that. So this is our hope for you, that together, collectively, as our Experience of the Soul podcast family, that we're collectively waking up by hearing each other's stories and remembering the tremendous power we have, to change our lives for the better. As always, we're seeking to help you grow, prosper, and evolve, and we thank you. We bless you for the part you're playing in our show, in the channel itself, and in the world as you live a spiritual life. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and blessings on the journey, dear friend.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2022, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.